early morning, May the 25th. It's been almost 2 weeks since 7551 East derailed, slamming into San Bernardino. But the cleanup was fast. For more than a week, the trains and the fuel in a pipeline below have been running smoothly. Then, from a clear sky, rain seems to fall. Large sections of the neighborhood are soaked by this peculiar shower. Ruth Green is back in her house when for the second time in a month, she's confronted with a horrifying sight.
To the left of me, as far as I could see up, down, or side to side, was nothing but a big wall of fire. I got to the front door, neighbors were screaming, "Get out, get out." I ran for my life.
Once again, the fire department responds to a major disaster on Duffy Street.
As we're getting the call and getting on the rig and opening the door, there was no doubt in my mind what that was. You could see a huge column of smoke and flame, and I knew immediately it had to be the pipeline.
A tower of smoke and flame reaches more than 100 meters into the sky.
Initially, when we got in there, we were so close that the plastic lenses on the front of the engine melted. Several of the turn signals, part of the red lights, melted. There is an intense noise coming from this pipeline where it had ruptured. It sounded like a jet engine. Deafening is how I would describe it. And we dealt with that all day long.
Local firefighters aren't the only ones called back to the scene.
I got a call report to the chairman's office. I went down to the chairman's office, notified that the pipeline blew up, and that I should get my team together again.
The area looked more or less like a war zone, where a lot of damage, a lot of fire damage had been done. Houses in the area were incinerated.
Once again, Calnev, which runs the pipeline, can't shut its emergency valves. Almost 2 million liters of fuel burn for more than 7 hours. By the time the flames are out, 2 people are dead. 3 more are injured. Another 11 houses have been destroyed. Investigators with the National Transportation Safety Board study both accidents. With the train crash, they focus on black boxes, which were recovered from 3 of the engines.
And that records distance, speed, throttle position, air brake pressures, that we tried to figure out what speed the train eventually got to. It exceeded the graph.
Like other freight trains, 7551 East has 2 different systems to slow it down: dynamic brakes and air brakes. Air brakes push a block against the wheels of each freight car. The greater the pressure applied to the block, the slower the train goes. Investigators learned that the air brakes were working properly as the train started down the hill. As the train sped up, though, engineer Frank Holland maintained pressure on the air brakes. The heat created by the brakes became so intense that they melted. By the time of the crash, they were useless. The team turns its focus to the dynamic brakes. The dynamic brakes harness a magnetic field created by the engine's main generator. They reverse the magnetic field, which slows the axles on the locomotive. There were 4 engines at the front of the train, and 2 at the back. Before beginning his trip, engineer Frank Holland knew that his second engine wasn't working at all, and that the dynamic brakes on his 4th engine were only working sporadically. Still, it was more than enough.
And we figured that with the units that we had on the head end and the 2 helpers that they gave us later on, we could do 30 miles an hour down that grade with no problem.
What the NTSB investigators discover from the black boxes is stunning. The brakes on the third engine at the front of the train didn't work at all as 7551 East gathered speed. During the trip, Holland had even checked with the brakeman in the third engine.
Alan.
Yeah?
What are your dynamics like?
They're revving.
But the black boxes show investigators that even though the dynamic brakes were making the noise they usually make, they weren't working. They weren't helping slow the train down at all. But it gets worse.
Coupled and ready to go.
Roger
Of
that.
the two engines added to the back of the train, one didn't have any braking power either. Lawrence Hill, the engineer at the back, knew it, but he never told Frank Holland.
He didn't communicate to him that he had only one locomotive had a dynamic, the other one was out. The helper engineer thought that the dispatcher would notify the lead engineer.
Call in the helper.
This is the helper.
You got all your dynamics?
Yeah, I'm in full.
So when Holland asks Hill at the back of the train if he has all of his dynamics, Hill says yes. But he only means in the one engine. It's a startling discovery. Holland doesn't have anywhere near the braking power he thinks he does. Investigators studying the black boxes uncover one more secret of the train's terrifying ride down the mountain.
Something must be wrong up there.
When Lawrence Hill pulled the emergency brakes, he actually cancelled out the dynamic brakes. It's a safety feature to keep the wheels from locking and the train from sliding down the tracks. In this case, with the air brakes melting, the dynamic brakes were the only thing holding the train back. Putting the emergency brakes on actually sped the train up.
When the emergency brakes are applied, what happens is you lose your dynamic braking and you've got a runaway train now.
But Pugh is still puzzled. According to all the paperwork, 7551 East was hauling 3.5 million kilos of cargo. At that weight, even with his crippled engines, Holland should have been able to hold his speed going down the mountain. To find out why he couldn't, investigators turned their attention to the days before the accident.